Kurt, it happened. The Nuggets won. First championship. Jokic, unanimous MVP, was absolutely stellar. I mean, what were your big takeaways?
It was, look, first off, it was a coronation for Jokic, right? Like, there was so much debate about around the MVP this year, right? Like, oh, is he really, are we going to give him 3 straight? Is he really that guy? Should we be mentioning him with Bird and Russell and all that? And like, he just went out and dominated the playoffs. So like, in that sense, it's a coronation. It kind of ends that, is he really that great conversation that I think some casual fans had? Like, is he really all that? Because to be fair, Corey, he's not like when you watch him play, he's brilliant, but he's not somebody who walks on the court and just instantly passes the eye test of great player. So I think that there was that. But I think, Corey, the other interesting thing to me that was really impressive from Denver, Game 5 in particular, but frankly, the last 3 games, they were all played on Miami's terms. They were grinding, slow, defensive.
But that's how Jokic plays.
Yeah.
Because that's what great players do is like, we'll take what you give me, and I'll still beat you.
Yeah, wasn't that what Denver did? They're like, oh, you want to play that way? All right, we're going to have a great Christian Braun game. We're going to have other guys step up too. But like, they beat the Heat at their own game, which is what Boston couldn't do, what Milwaukee couldn't do, right?
Yeah, and I agree with you that, remember in the All-Star game, I will never forget this. I was watching the All-Star game. You know how they had the draft this year?
Yeah.
And all the players, players, that is like when you show like, well, who do I respect? Who do I want my team kind of thing? The last 2 picks, right? It was Lauri Markkanen and Jokic, the back-to-back MVP. Jokic didn't even wait for his name to get called. He just walked over, right? And just said, okay, I'm on your team. I'm not going to be the last pick. And I thought to myself, this is the back-to-back MVP. And I understand the All-Star game, whatever. Like, no one plays defense. I get that. But I'm saying, like, the respect level wasn't even there from the rest of the guys in the league. I'm like, you're going to wait for the second to last pick? He's going to have to pick himself? And then now it's like you're seeing these comments come out. It's like, well, he's legendary. He's one of the all-time greats, potentially the best center to ever play the game. And it's like, well, what happened since February? Like,
I think that's true. Although he will be the first to admit that like the All-Star game is a bad format for his style of game. But still,
you still have to show respect. He's a back-to-back MVP. Like, you're not going to let
I think they were brilliant, and I think the other thing that really stood out, and I think every championship team does this. You look, Jokic was the best player, unanimous MVP. If they'd expanded it beyond 11 guys and had 50 people vote, it would have been 50-0, right? Like, it was a given. But if you're a championship team, you have to have the role players step up for them, and they did. I mean, Bruce Brown got himself paid.
Great pickup. Great pickup. I mean, I always think to myself, I'm a nerd, just like you and me, Kurt, we like to geek out about the small things around the margins. I always think about what are the greatest additions, per pound, like around like the trade deadline, or just or just in general, like things around that you can pick up and really increase your team's, efficacy. Obviously, Aaron Gordon was huge for the Denver Nuggets generally. I thought, talk about a great
when they got him 3 years ago,
and free agency and all that stuff. I understand, but Bruce Brown, pound for pound, what he brought to that team. I mean, I loved him in Brooklyn, but in Denver, he was perfect. I mean, perfect.
Can defend, and by the way, put in a better position. Steve Nash had him playing like small ball 4 at points, like just trying to go kind of crazy lines. They're like, no, you're a guard wing, and just stay in your lane. And he was brilliant at it in that role and stepped up. But they got Christian Braun. Christian Braun had
another guy who punched above his weight, I thought. I mean, he won a championship. I know he said he's in the super exclusive group of back-to-back championships like Magic Johnson and Bill Russell are in that group.
Billy Thompson, there's a couple of random ones who are guys got drafted late Billy Thompson got drafted late into the middle of the Showtime Lakers after winning with, I think it was Michigan State. You're like, oh, well done, dude. But he didn't play a role like this, really.
I know, and that's what I love about Braun and Brown is both of them, I think great teams. Obviously, you know what Jokic is going to do. He's going to give you a triple-double every single game. You know what Jamal Murray can do. You know what, like I said, Aaron Gordon understood his role, and I think he did very, very well in that role, giving you critical games when he needed to. And then obviously Michael Porter Jr., everyone's been enamored with him since he got in the league. He's like the perfect basketball player as far as like body type and skill set. It's like, what? So I understand that, but to be able to get your bench players and your role players to punch above their weight all the way down,
Yeah.
I mean, that is a dream. That's what great management is. That's what a great GM does. So in my mind, Denver like knocked that out of the ballpark.
Yeah. Two quick thoughts. They did that. I mean, when you said all the way down, game 6, Jokic, was it game 6? Jokic gets in a little bit of foul trouble, and DeAndre Jordan's got to play 4 minutes. Like, they've got to get him a couple of minutes out there. He blocked a shot, grabbed a couple boards, like, hey, in this really small role, and I think Reggie Jackson did it earlier in the season. We just need you to do this for a few minutes, and they stepped up and did it. Michael Porter Jr., I think, deserves credit, not just because it's a great story after 3 back surgeries, which were the red flag. It's the reason he dropped in the draft and all that. But in this game, and frankly, the whole finals, he could not hit. He could not shoot, to the point where you could feel the tension in the building. Like, every time he started to go up, you'd feel everyone go, no. You could see, like, to do it. And he hit the one and the roof came off the place. But he knew he wasn't hitting. He was getting to the rim and finishing. He was defending. He was making plays. He's like, all right, that's not falling. How else can I impact the game? And so many guys get in their own head when the shot doesn't fall, and they don't impact the other parts of the game. And to his credit, he didn't just roll over. He was a critical part of what made it work for them. So,
and as a young player too, I
24.
And I understand that, you know, the Denver Nuggets have been doing this. You know, it's kind of funny because you think, okay, well, there are some other teams like the Lakers, for instance, who kind of identify really good talent and then lose them, right? You know, the list is long there.
They're going to overpay Austin Reeves this summer because of that. They're not going to let it go, right?
Exactly. It's like we've learned our lesson with everybody else who's left. Caruso, D'Angelo Russell came back, and then, you know, Julius Randle, you know, Brandon Ingram. Like, the list is very long in LA, but they're good at picking talent, right? Denver's great at developing talent. Like, remember Jeremy Grant, who went to Detroit, got that huge deal, became their guy. I mean, he was there on that Denver team, and I thought, wow, like, how did they find? Because he'd been in the league a while before them, but he didn't necessarily hit his stride yet, you know. And it's the same thing with Aaron Gordon. He was in Miami. You're like, okay, well, like, yeah, you're good, but are you a franchise player? Then he goes to Denver, and just automatically, it's just wow, like, you know, the trade value, his value as an individual just goes to the roof, because you're like, that's the kind of guy that, you know, anyone would want on the team. And I think that's what Denver's really, really, really good at. And it took me a while until this season. I was like, this has actually been happening the past few years. Mike Malone and his staff just do a really good job of that. So I want to give them hats off.
They deserve credit, and they're set up. They're set up to do this in the future, and they're really smart about it. If you notice, there was a small trade that didn't get a lot of attention because it wasn't a player during the finals, where they were trying to set themselves up for the future. They traded with Oklahoma City their 2029 pick, so way out past what they want to think about, for late 2024 first rounder and a high second rounder in this coming draft. And the reason is just what you're saying. Hey, especially with the new CBA, it's going to get really expensive really fast to keep this team together. Their core 4 is like literally at the salary cap next year
and they're signed through 2024, 2025, the starting
five.
Right.
The starting 5 are locked up for next year, and KCP has a player option 2 years out, and, you know, may or may not, but it's not going to be some unreasonable number they can't match. So they're kind of locked in. Christian Brown is locked in, but it's going to be, and we'll talk about the other guys in a second, but this is a really smart move by them, bringing in, like, if you're going to keep this thing going in a new CBA, you're going to have to draft. I think the Lakers are looking to look, they've got the 17 pick. They're talking to teams right now about getting Brooklyn has 2 in the first round later. They're like, can we get 2 for 1 and maybe draft 2 guys who can fit into the rotation? Because you're going to need rookies who can contribute, and guys who spend multiple years in college might be more valuable in the back end of the first round now, or early second, where you're like, hey, can this guy come in and play? Can I get this guy and he can come in and help me now, even if his ceiling isn't up there? Can this guy help me keep this team going now? Because I'm going to need, if I'm paying my stars, I've got to have these rookie contract level minimum guy, affordable players who can help. And that's going to be the trick, I think. You know, like KCP, they've got locked up. Corey, Bruce Brown's made $15 million, a little 15.2, I think it is, over the course of his NBA career through 5 years.
Yeah.
He's going to make that next year. Like his salary next year is going to be in that ballpark. Like I don't know if Denver can keep him because of it.
And that's a phenomenal point you just brought up. I mean, because in football, the way you look at, it's always helpful to put things in perspective and look at parallels. You look at, running backs, you're going to get your highest performance. Like you can get a rookie running back who rushes for 1,000 yards. That happens often, right? So you're looking at like, okay, if I want a team, why pay, a superstar running back or a veteran running back, a high dollar? Even the veteran minimum is crazy versus a rookie contract. You can get the same, if not better, production early on. So just draft the rookie, right? And I think what you brought up is a phenomenal point that cannot be overstated. Is that in the NBA right now, there are so many people who have tried to do let's just get an aging superstar. Then it's like, well, let's get an aging superstar on a veteran minimum contract. They buy out their contract, then sign with us for whatever, something at a very ridiculous rate. And that has not necessarily worked out the past few years. Like we've seen that not work. So then the alternative to that is, well, you go through the draft, right? And the reality is Denver, it's not like they're pivoting strategies, right? They went through the draft. They built an incredible team, a championship team. They did it the right way, and now they're peaking at the perfect time where Jokic is 28 and he's a back-to-back MVP, finals MVP, right? And a champion. Murray's 26. Like everyone around, like their core came to the draft and is peaking. Now, instead of they can do the better minimum thing or try to get people like you're talking about, Bruce Brown level. Another example would be someone like the guy from Miami, Jay Crowder, who went to Phoenix. Like you can get like a Marcus Smart, but those guys are going to cost you $10-20 million a year. Why not get someone like a Christian Braun out of the draft, late first round? You're going to pay a rookie scale contract, and the guys who stay in college now because of NIL, it's actually the perfect system. You can get a guy who has 4 years of experience and pay him rookie. That's a great point, Kurt. I think.
No, I love that. I'm glad you brought up Jay Crowder because like there's more of that. There is more of we really need this guy. And Crowder was out of the rotation. We didn't see him at the end of the year. Didn't see him in the playoffs. And everybody looks at we'll talk more about the Heat later. They talk about Kevin Love, which was a really good.
I thought that was a great pick.
It can work. It can work, but there's way more misses than hits. It's really hard to find that guy. And if you had told me Kevin Love was going to work out this well in Miami, I would have thought you were hitting those special brownies a little early in the day, man. But he was brilliant.
I thought that was a great pickup for Miami. I gotta say, I was very pleasantly surprised. But you're right, there are way more misses than hits, and I just think going to the draft, instead of trying to draft a superstar, although this year clearly there are some superstars to get, which is awesome. I think the great teams are going to be the ones that exactly you're saying. How can we find guys who can help us now? And in the NBA draft, the past couple of years, it seems as though it's been impossible to really evaluate talent because guys are like 18, 19. They spend 3 weeks on campus and then come to the league, or they play 3 games. And it's like, well, how do you like really justify this? It's safer to go veteran. But I think now with the NIL rules, keeping kids in college longer because they can get paid. And especially with the whole G League too, you can go make $500,000 in the G League and get some tape and kind of make the fix there. I think that makes so much more sense for teams building out 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, that side of the roster. Give me 10 minutes of valuable play,
Well, I think that kind of touches on the other big topic around this team, which is, and a lot of people talk about, is can they do it again? Which I think they absolutely, in the short term, just looking next year, absolutely. Like, I think that I know they're the betting favorites, and with good reason, because even if you look at every other team in the West, it's like, well, Phoenix took them 2 games, and they've got Durant and Booker. Yeah, sure, but who are you putting around them? The Lakers are older. The Warriors are older. There's teams capable of making those runs, but then you get into the longer question of legacy, or dynasty. Can this team can they win 3 out of the next 5, 4 out of the next, 6 or 7? Corey, I think this jumps us over to Corey's Jukebox because it's right along those lines.
Yes, it is. So Corey's Jukebox, I want to bring in Fleetwood Mac. So I'm inviting Fleetwood Mac into the pod.
Let me skateboard with my juice and go. We're ready.
All right. Oh, really? Yeah. I wanted to play. So I didn't know this, I'm kind of a music nerd. So I was like, not really, I guess, whatever. So, I went back there. Fleetwood Mac made like 10 albums before Rumors. like,
I didn't even know.
I know I was on Apple Music and I was just like, oh, Fleetwood Mac. I want to listen to, you know, like Lindsey Buckingham and like Stevie Nicks, like that Fleetwood Mac that I know so well, like Rhiannon and Dream, you know, like all those songs, Go Your Own Way kind of thing.
Yeah.
But they made, like, the list just kept going on and on and on before. I found out they had like, I think 9 or 8 years of a band like Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac. Like 8 years of like real hard blues, like influenced by Muddy Waters. Like, I mean, it was
Wow.
like blues, John Lee Hooker, Muddy Waters. It's kind of like the classic movie, you know, all the British bands were like listening to Muddy Waters and Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and then and Robert Johnson, and then they just kind of like, it influenced the British rock, and then you have like Rolling Stones and obviously Fleetwood Mac and like a ton of bands coming out of that. But the main point here is that I didn't realize that the music was like completely different for like almost a decade.
Yeah.
And then they got Stevie Nicks and Lindsey, and next thing you know, it starts warping and warping until it creates this whole new band that then, you know, like Hall of Fame caliber, changes the world kind of thing. But it was hard to keep together. It was very volatile, that partnership, but it was very productive. And so I think that, I wanted to do the album Then Play On, which is a classic album from the old Fleetwood Mac before they got Stevie and Lindsey. And, you know, so that to me is kind of where the Denver Nuggets are right now. That's the dynasty question. Is, you know, they're like a good blues band, you know, like they you know, they've been, you know, together for almost a decade, 7-8 years, and they made a great album, Then Play On. You know, they made a great album. The question is, can you keep doing it? The only way you can keep doing it, I believe, I don't think this team is primed to be a dynasty per se, in the sense that like they're going to need help.
Yeah.
Because I think the West this year was like not that good.
No.
so in the past couple of years, it's kind of been a toss up in the West. It's like there hasn't been, you know, the Eastern Conference has been the more powerful, more consistent, more dominant conference, but they just kind of beat themselves up. And then a bruised Eastern Conference, you know, contender comes out and plays the West. In my opinion, you know, I think especially this year, like the Heat weren't that good. Like we didn't even know they were going to make the play-in game, right? And then the Lakers were not good. You know, another thing where I'm like, they kind of like got lucky. Memphis beat themselves and they beat a bad Warriors team that had no chemistry, and then they ended up getting swept by the Nuggets. So in my mind, I'm like, I know the Nuggets are good, but I think given the circumstances, the extraordinary circumstances of this season, I don't know how good they actually are. I don't think they're dynasty level. I think there's obviously champions and contenders. They're a great blues band, like the old Fleetwood Mac, but they're going to need Stevie and Lindsey to get to that dynasty level. But then the reality is you can't sustain that for very long.
No, I think, by the way, I think the legacy question just becomes weird in the new CBA because we don't know the consequences yet. Like it's going to have real impacts and it's going to be harder to keep teams together, but there's always unintended consequences. So like what we think of the new CBA and how it affects team building when we're talking about this 3 years from now will be different just because we'll have a sense of it. I think they're poised to make runs, but you are right. First off, to be fair, nobody wins a championship without luck. Like I don't want to downplay what they did. Like I don't care if you're the 72 win Bulls, man. You catch some breaks or you don't win it, right?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, but they did catch a lot, and Boston kept shooting itself in the foot. Milwaukee couldn't get past the Heat and had an injured star, but also shot them, like came apart at the seams. Like you said, the West, and even looking ahead next year, you're like, well, Memphis could be really good. And then you look at the looming Ja Morant's, you know,
which we should get an answer pretty soon.
I would have bet this weekend. The parade is Thursday, so my guess is they won't. Silver won't drop it before that because he wants to focus on the Nuggets. But Friday, Saturday, somewhere in there, Monday, they don't. Let's put it this way: they want to get it into that window before the draft on Thursday, next Thursday. They don't want it dominating that news cycle. So, but anyway, the point is, like, they're kind of a chemistry mess and probably will be a chemistry mess. I think the West sets up for them pretty well, although Phoenix is the one team I think could really pull it together, and maybe the Lakers or Warriors. But the dynasty requires, like you said, Boston's going to get their act together, right? Like I just feel like there's so much power in the East that it's not going to be that easy to do. And dynasty is one of those things where it's easy to say, yeah, look, they've locked their guys down. They are set up to make a run. I think they're set up as well as you can be, but actually doing it, actually winning. What did the Warriors win? 4 out of 6, 4 out of 7, whatever that was. Like that's
putting yourself in a position.
Hard.
Yeah, putting yourself in a position to go there 6 or 7 times. That's the thing. Is like a dynasty. Like you make the finals 7 years in a row. You know what I'm saying? Like that's kind of what I mean. Is that like, given the circumstances, I'm like, could I honestly see this Denver Nuggets team in the finals for the next, 8 years or 5 years? And that's what a dynasty is. And I'm not necessarily sure if I can even say yes with confidence on that question.
Yeah.
And then you're going to say, can they win, whatever, half of the next 5, like 4 out of 8, like the Warriors, or like, whatever the Bulls won, like 6 out of 8, like, can they win that many? That's another question entirely. So that's kind of what I mean, is I'm very hesitant to throw the word dynasty, but absolutely great team, set up the right way.
Yeah.
The foundation's there. I think they can, with Stevie and Lindsay, in our Fleetwood Mac example, I think they can become a Hall of Fame type of team. But the question is, who's going to come in and help them get there? But right now, I think they've cemented themselves as a contender next year.
Yeah,
for sure.
Is Jokic Mick Fleetwood in this analogy? I'm trying to figure out who he is.
I have no idea. It's just a band. Anyway, so let's go to Kurt's corner. So look, we talked about Miami. We talked about getting to the finals, and once again, completely underrated team in the sense that this team, as constructed, without a bankable, in the sense, superstar that would drive ratings and stuff, 2 of the last 4 years in the finals. Given that extremely difficult Eastern Conference, what does this team need to do? Like to get over that hump? Are they good enough in your mind? What do you think?
They are so good they're going to have a hard time reconstructing this roster. Gabe Vincent and Max Strus are free agents. This is a team that has a history of overpay. Like we fall in love with those guys and then we overpay them. And now what are we going to do with Duncan Robinson? And there's 8 different there's a bunch of other Duncan Robinsons before that. They tend to overpay their guys and then try to get out from under them. And I'm not sure if they're going to do that in this case. The buzz around the league, I mean, during the finals, talking to people from Miami and people around the buzz is that they're going to go star hunting, and that they are, if Bradley Beal shakes out in Washington, that's the kind of guy that Miami might want. I don't think Damian Lillard gets traded this summer. I don't think he, we've discussed this. I don't think it happens. If he ever became available, Miami would be the kind of place he would go. Like, I think they can draw it. Bradley Beal's the one where there's a real sense Washington's going to break this thing up. And his price tag isn't going to be trade-wise in terms of this isn't going to be one of those Kevin Durant, all right, I need 4 first-rounders and 8, like pick swaps. And it's not going to be like that because of his contract.
His contract trade.
He has no trade clause, so Bradley Beal's only going to go anywhere Bradley Beal wants to go. Otherwise, he'll just turn down the trade. I think he'd take one to Miami if it came to that. But Miami, knowing that, and knowing that he's in a $251 million, we've discussed before, $250 million contract that's just going to anchor your books for years. I don't think people are going to give up that much.
He's in year 2. He's
in year 2.
So I signed this deal.
So I think this is more the kind of thing where Kyle Lowry probably ends up in the deal only because he's making $27 million and he's kind of salary ballast and you can make it work. And then you throw in someone like Tyler Hero and they've got some picks and you make it work. And I think, whether that comes to fruition or not, by the way, I think you're going to see the Heat go star hunting. And I think you are going to see by next trade deadline, I think you'll see Bradley Beal on the move. I think you're going to see Washington completely retool this thing and finally do what, you and I have talked before, like, we don't know what Washington is doing. They might actually have a plan now with Michael Winger.
It's interesting though with Miami. I gotta say, I don't appreciate the way that the Tyler Hero situation has unfolded.
Yeah,
think about this for a second. They saw this guy, had that spark, right? Yeah. He captured the fans' imagination coming off the bench. wins the sixth man of the year, right? Like he like cements himself as a really good player for you. You kind of throw him into the fire a bit, like kind of mix around. You're like, okay, well, let's get him into the starting lineup. Versus coming off the bench and kind of being like that Jordan Clarkson spark plug for us. Let's get him into a starter, and then he gets injured, and the team, first of all, the team hasn't looked good. Like, and we talk this all the time. They didn't really look good all year long, right? And then they put it together in the finals. But there was a really funny coincidence there, if you really think about it. Playing game first round. When did Tyler Hero like stop playing? For like he had the broken hand. Yeah. Then they go on this crazy run. And they almost, they almost win a championship without one of their, their anointed stars. Like, looks like I thought they were really going to invest in him and build really build the franchise around him, or at least, with him as a considerable part of that. But now he kind of seems, I don't want to say, he kind of seems dispensable, know, and it's kind of like, how does it happen in 2 years? Like, oh, you're a great bench player. Oh, you're a starter. Now we don't really need you to go to the finals. That to me is very frightening if I'm Tyler Hero. So I think you're right. Like being in a trade package, that could be very, very feasible.
Tyler Hero as a secondary shot creator, I think is kind of a sixth man, but like he first off, he wanted that starting role, but I will tell you that I know Miami had that conversation during the season and they didn't do it because Tyler really wanted to start and they wanted to give this a real chance. But there was a sense that, hey, man, Gabe Vincent's become just rock solid. Like we can count on him. And if he's out there, and he eventually took Kyle Lowry's job, but like if he's out there, we're not as vulnerable defensively. And then we can turn Tyler might just be a great sixth man, right?
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
and
it's not.
Kind of what I mean is, I think that's what I mean is like, I understand like what, I think the way I agree with you, as an organization, you got to listen to your players. But at a certain point too, you got to understand, there's this idea of like what's good for the player and what's good for the organization. And obviously, what's better for the organization always trumps out. And in this case, where I think we're seeing that very clearly. I think Tyler Hero is an unbelievable six man. Period. Right. But beyond that, I think that creates at this stage in his career, because he's so young, like to want that much responsibility at that age. I think that is a detriment to the organization, as we clearly saw that play out. So as an organization, we're like, look, accept the role or we got to move on. That's what I would think. Yeah. And it's just a shame that I think it came so quickly, is my point, is that sometimes it's better to take your time on the road to greatness versus kind of just jumping into it and then being in a position where you're no longer necessary. Now it's like we can go to the finals without you, and that's a really hard conversation to have, to go from the darling to, yeah, we can live without you. I mean, that's all because you wanted to be a starter. Like that to me is it's
hard. I will say this, as much as we talk about it, if there's one organization I trust to kind of figure it out, find a couple guys and make it work, it's Miami, right? Like
yeah, we trust them for sure.
We trust them. The other thing I want to talk about in Kurt's Corner, though, we're just a little more than a week away from the draft, and I'm going to safely say, Corey, and you know some people in San Antonio, they're probably going to take Wembanyama, right? I think we're safe there. I think we can safely say that's a lock, right?
So what else are you looking at then?
But after that, it gets wide open. And there's a lot of – look, Charlotte at 2, willing to trade the pick. Portland at 3, willing to trade the pick. Houston at 4, Detroit at 5. All of those picks are in play, which makes it a really kind of wild run up to the draft. Why you're hearing Zion Williamson rumors. The Pelicans are very high on Scoot Henderson and can picture Scoot in their system next to Brandon Ingram, next to CJ McCollum, next to all that. CJ as a great mentor for what is a good young guy. When I got to talk, the minutes I've gotten to talk to Scoot Henderson, he seems like a good, thoughtful young man. And somebody like you would want to bring into the organization, and they've got good role players, and they're like, man, we can make this work. Would they trade Zion? And that buzz is out there. I don't know if they're going to. I don't know that the market for Zion.
I wouldn't do
it. I would say if you were Charlotte, would you want him? And by the way, about to start his $194 million massive contract.
I know. I think once again, this is if you're New Orleans, in my mind, you have to roll the dice on Zion. Like it's just, I mean, but then you think about the trade value. Like, if you think about like, well, would another organization want him? I think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Because when he does play, he's all-star caliber, and when he doesn't play, they're still going to talk about your organization. So I feel like, from a star power standpoint, he's a must. Like it's not a liability. Even if he's sitting on the bench.
If Charlotte actually would make a deal like that and put Zion next to LaMelo Ball, like that's a must-watch. It's risky, but man, I will tune in.
It's kind of like, remember Derrick Rose. To me, that the Zion question at this very moment is very similar to Derrick Rose, where Derrick Rose, wins MVP, and like he has a cool nickname, D Rose. He's so much fun to watch. And even though he did not play at the MVP level, like again, you still want to watch D Rose. You still want to cheer for him. Like when he gets on the court, he's a fan favorite. Everyone loves seeing him come off the bench or just get any minutes whatsoever. Like he's still a valuable asset to the organization. So I think that's kind of what I mean is Zion, whether he plays or not, like I think he still captures the imagination. And there are so many players in the NBA, but very few of them capture the imagination, where people actually want to like watch you. Like, people want, like there were presidents like who flew to Durham to watch him play. There's like very few people in the world have that kind of that secret sauce.
I mean, just the stats. He's played 37% of his games over 4 years. But last season paid in 29. But when he's played in his career, it's 25 points a game on 60% shooting with 7 boards. And last season, in the 29 games he played, when he was on the floor, they were outscoring their opponents by 7 points per 100. Like they were crushing teams when he was on the floor. You've just got to find a way to get him both motivated and in shape and willing to play through some stuff. But like, is he just? I don't know the answer to the question. Is he just going to be one of those guys? Is he going to be just one of those guys who never? We said this about Joel. The reason I'm hesitant, we've said it about Joel Embiid. We watched Michael Porter Jr. just have a great finals after 3 back surgeries. Like we've seen guys, even Jamal Murray from the ACL, which is more common now, but still a heck of a thing. It's not easy to come back from those injuries, but man, it's hard to give up on talent like that.
So yeah, I mean, especially since he's so young, I think you look at the bet. It's like, we can't really lose. You know what I'm saying? Like we're paying other guys X amount of millions of dollars, and they still kind of bring in the draw that he does. And like, if it pans out, it really pans. I mean, it's kind of like venture investing. Like I was talking to one of my mentors recently about this, and it's like, yeah, you have a lot of ones that don't win, right? But the ones that win, they're like, they win. It's Google. It's like it's the one win that make you a champion. It's like, oh, you got into PayPal, you got into Google, like you invested in Amazon, you invested in Netflix. That makes your whole career. Right. Then you're the GM that traded for Zion. Like you can get a job for the rest of your life. People will invite you to sit on boards. And it's like, well, how did you do that when everyone doubted you? It's like, well, like that pays for life. So that's kind of what I mean. It's a bet that to me is a no-brainer. Like just like you're betting on Amazon or whatever. Like if it pans out, it pans out.
Yeah. And Scoot is. Here's what I know. I know Zion's really good. I think Scoot's going to be really good.
But didn't he fall a little bit? Because I remember it was
he's fallen
in all the.
Yeah, he's fallen. There's questions about his shot. I think is what it comes down to. Is he going to be? He's explosive athleticism, can finish at the rim, looks like a team leader. But if you can't shoot, and there's a question about if. Amen. Thompson has this in this draft. A few other guys. Like if you can't shoot from the outside, then you're. And I mean this. I don't mean this pejoratively, but if you're modeling Russell Westbrook, and I can just like the current version where I'm like, yeah, he can still get to the rim. He can still finish. He's still an elite athlete. I want to play 4 feet off him, 6 feet off him, and dare him to shoot. Like your value goes down.
So then are there anything else before we head up and
I don't think so. I just say just heading into the draft, by the time we're talking about this next week, the day before the draft, and we're talking in more detail, Corey, I think some things are going to have shifted. I think we're going to see trades lined up, and I think we're going to see a lot more activity on draft night, both with both through the first round, but like not just, it's fun to talk about the top 5 and does somebody want Scoot versus Brandon Miller versus, I think you're going to see a lot of moves in the teens and 20s with teams under the new CBA, like the Lakers, like the Nuggets, we were talking about. There's others who are just like, we got to get some rookies in here. We got to get some guys in here we think can help us. You're still going to have and Kawhi Leonard and Giannis Antetokounmpo and all these guys drafted in the early teens. Like, you still should take some swings.
Yeah.
But I think you're going to see a lot of teams be like, hey, who's the high floor guys? I think the high floor guys are suddenly going to look better.
And what about Portland? We talked about New Orleans, what they might do with Zion, but what about Portland and Damian Lillard? What direction do you see them going?
Look, right now they are still all on the same page up there, and that page is keep Lillard, trade the pick, do whatever we have to do. We want guys who can help us win now. Their hope is that they could trade the number 3 and somebody like Anthony Simons, like a good young player, to get a more established player, a Mikal Bridges kind of player. That would be their dream. Somebody
more established is funny because he literally just established himself like a year ago.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's the goal. They re-sign Jeremy Grant, who we talked about earlier. Surprising Jeremy Grant, make a trade for another star or rising star like Bridges. Keep Lillard, who was deservingly All NBA last year. He was brilliant, and they're not done. They want to make a run at this. Things would have to really fall apart for them to consider trading him, and I'd be shocked if it happens. I'd be surprised if it happens this summer. If everything falls apart and they look terrible at the trade deadline, maybe we're having a different conversation. But right now, I think that they might trade the pick, but they're not trading Lillard. They're all in on making it work.
Gotcha. And last but not least, to wrap up, we always like to have a little bit of fun. So think about this idea. In Transformers, the movie just came out. I don't know if you're going to see it, but apparently. I don't know much about Transformers. Apparently, you have a sidekick, obviously. And our producer Dan had this idea. Well, what would be your sidekick?
Yeah, because I think he was using Bumblebee as the kind of anything. Really. Well, yeah. Bumblebee is the cool Camaro, that yellow Camaro, right? Camaro that becomes the becomes the Transformer. And so what would you? Car just seems too easy, doesn't it? Like, it would be easy to say, I want my car to be that. And I'm trying to think of what other electronic gadget in my life, though, that had, and then Dan said, well, now they're animals too. And I'm like, well, now I'm good with that, because I'm entering Pablo Escobar era. And I'm like, I'm just bringing a tiger everywhere I go. I am going to have a tiger that I feed raw meat to in the backyard. And then it's going to come everywhere with me. And then it's going to transform into things when I need it.
Wow.
What about you, Corey?
I'm going to go with a satellite.
Oh, nice.
Because I feel like there's like the space race, we're like space race 2.0.
Yeah.
And I feel like that'd be very useful, as people try to, go to space more. I feel like, well, it'd be nice to have a friend out there. And I think it'd be also nice, because in theory, I feel like a satellite would be helpful. If I went to like a submarine or a helicopter or an airplane, I feel like, okay, well, at a certain point, what if I'm not, I feel like the accessibility of like, I need information, or like, can you help me locate something? I feel like if I had a friend up in space, like, oh yeah, just like shift and boom, I can get whatever connectivity, or I don't know what I would be using this for.
You're not attaching one of those like laser killing things attached to your satellite, right? Where you just shoots people randomly.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know, like what yeah, there's no ray attached to my satellite. I don't know what I need if I needed a friend, I feel like a friend in space would be helpful.
Yeah.
Because I don't really go near water a lot, so I don't really know why I would need a friend in the water, or like, I don't know. Like I said, I don't really know how this works. I don't drive. I can't have a subway train as my transformer. So I'm like, I might as well go into space. What the heck? I
don't know. I like the idea of I like the idea of a New York subway just evolving into a transformer.
But once again, it's like then I go to Coney Island, and then beyond that, like, I'm stuck. It's like, like I can't go. I can go up to the Bronx, but I can't go to Westchester. Like it's like I feel like it'd be very limited. I'd be like, so. But the satellite though, I feel like would be really fun. It'd be like an international space station, my own private.
Your own data, right? Like it's taking your own satellite images of whatever you need satellite images of. So.
Once again, I don't know what I would need this for. You know, like it seems helpful. Whatever. So, anyways, next week it's going to be a big week for us, and during the draft, as you mentioned, I'm excited to see what news comes out. A lot of teams found their coaches, right? They found the direction they want to go in, locking down the stars or going to lose their stars in the case of Washington. This is going to be fascinating, Kurt. We'll see exactly how all this plans out next week.
It's going to be a fun draft, man.